All right. Hi, we're the Montreal AI Ethics Institute, an international nonprofit research institute that is focused on equipping and empowering diverse stakeholders from around the world to shape technical and policy measures. I am Abhishek Gupta, the founder of the Montreal AI Ethics Institute and a machine learning engineer at Microsoft, also serving on the CSE Responsible AI board. And today I'm joined by Alexandrine, Ali, Camylle, and Connor, who are all researchers at the Montreal AI Ethics Institute as well. Alex?
Hi everyone, so my name is Alexandrine. I hold a joint honors degree in history and anthropology. My interest in AI largely focus on cross-cultural perspectives in AI research as well as ethnographic studies of technological development.
Hi everyone, my name is Ali. I have a background in international development and a master's in global affairs. Both of these programs have really imparted on me the importance of creating very strategic interventions to create meaningful change. And my interests are in AI fairness, transparency, and accountability.
Hi, I'm Camylle. I have a bachelor's in honors philosophy, and I'll be starting a master's in public policy in the fall. I'll focus on AI policy, and I'm currently working on projects that at the intersection of AI ethics, environmental issues, and social issues.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Connor. I'm currently a researcher at the May Institute and currently a third-year philosophy student at the University of Exeter in the UK. My interests mainly lie with talking about AI ethics in terms of African philosophy, so Ubuntu ethics, and stemming from my childhood in South Africa.
Very cool. And so the question that we're discussing today is on how to put AI ethics into practice, especially as there's been a proliferation of guidelines and principles, and all of these abstract notions, but when the rubber meets the road, it starts to become a problem for organizations that are trying to actually implement some of these ideas within their existing workflows and to operationalize them. So why don't we kickstart this discussion with Ali talking a little bit about how we can actually put some of these AI ethics ideas into practice.
Yeah, thanks, Abhishek. So as we've seen, lots of guidelines are emerging around the world with sort of ethical principles that can serve as guiding stars for lots of AI companies internationally, and yet we're still seeing AI technologies emerging in somewhat of a wild, wild west, and this is because there is not a lot of legal traction with a lot of these guidelines that are emerging. So when it comes to operationalizing effective ethical instruments or AI ethics instruments, there is a big push now for a grounding in human rights law and for countries to develop legally binding guidelines as it relates to these technologies. So I would say, firstly, it's important to really consider the binding quality of laws emerging that are regulating this space. Mm-hmm. But I'd be interested to hear from the rest of you about whether you think it has been effective to have sort of overarching ethical principles without the legally binding nature that are supporting them.
So I think one of the big things that we see there is a lack of how, the high-level ethical principles serve as an overarching umbrella that, sort of unites what we should be doing, but that doesn't translate into what we actually end up doing. And the problem there being that if it's, you're asking the kid with the candy jar to self-regulate, right? And if you're someone who loves candy, that's really hard to do. So we do need some sort of enforcement that happens that compels organizations to actually implement these in practice. especially when we're thinking about consequential domains where there is a potential to have significant impact on human lives. It is very important that we don't leave this sort of implementation in the hands of the organizations that are building the solutions. Oftentimes, there's also a misalignment between the people um, uh, who are the targets or who are the subjects of these systems and the ones who are developing them, especially when it comes to differences in public welfare and the profit motive. So there definitely is a need to have stricter enforcement mechanisms so that we don't just pay lip service to this, but actually put these into practice.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, sort of drawing from your point on public welfare, Abhishek, I think that the differences between the companies and their vested interests and who they want to serve is quite apparent in their ethical principles. And it gets to the stage where the point of agreement is a principle of equality or a principle of fairness or a principle of just. And that sort of serves as almost like a smokescreen in a way to cover what sort of differences and are set in between these principles. So what does equal mean? Does it mean equity or does it mean equality of opportunity? And I think that because of these different vested interests is why we haven't seen sort of actionable principles in a way, because of these sort of overarching principles being the only point that these different companies agree.
I think that's
Go ahead.
I think that's an interesting point, and sometimes the comparison can kind of be made to sort of initiatives that are made in terms of environmental impact. So you sort of see greenwashing, and now sometimes it feels like we're observing a sort of ethics washing, where it seems like companies have an incentive to build these ethical frameworks, but that are mostly motivated by, economical interests and really vesting into safe and secure technology. So how do you sort of reconcile the two and ensure that, maybe companies who do have an ethical framework in place, that they're actually actionable and not just like the stamp that they can sort of put as sort of similar to all these like environmental certifications that we're sort of seeing. So how to make sure that it's not becoming an ethics washing similar to greenwashing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. Those are some great points. And I want to highlight also that when implementing ethics principles, it's important to think also on the level of individual engineers or developers, individual people who are working in the field and are building the AI. Ethics principles are very, very, very broad for them, and they can't implement that into code. It just does not translate. And so we have to make sure that we have this translation happen. And luckily we have Abhishek, who is writing a book on putting ethics directly into making tech, making AI. So stay tuned for this book. I'm sure it's going to be
great. I think the educational aspect of it is quite important, because I think there's like a recent survey released by Anaconda that only 18% of data science students actually learn about ethics within their courses, which is, given the potential of AI, it's a scary low percentage. So it's how to ensure that the future generation of AI developers from the onset are really taught to be cognizant about the different implications of their technological powers, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a big part of it is also making sure that, it's not a single course that you take once and forget about it later on, which happens with a lot of university courses. We take them once and then, the next year around, we're like, what did we learn? So this is something that, is, I think needs to happen on a continual basis. So, those approaches where, people talk about the Hippocratic Oath for doing AI ethics, I think that's problematic in the sense that, there is no enforcement, again, to Ali's point. It's self-regulation, and it's something that when you're under different sorts of pressures in terms of delivering on project deadlines, all of those things go out the window because they're not front and center in your mind. So again, mechanisms like checklists, which are mandatory, or in fact a better way of doing this, rather than relying on vague and things that are in the back of your mind, like oaths, are I think ineffectual in that sense. But I think given the time constraint that we have here, concluding remarks from each of you on what's a key takeaway would be for people who are watching this.
I would say, sort of jumping off of the point that you made, Abhishek, as well as you, Alexandrine, which is that the considerations of the implications of AI technology should not just be at the end or as sort of an add-on to the development of the technology. This needs to be embedded in the entire AI lifecycle for a whole host of reasons. And it's for that reason that those that are training to be AI developers shouldn't just be able to take this course as an elective or as an add-on, and instead ethics as sort of a concept should be more embedded within all of the other courses that they are taking that are mandatory, I would say.
There needs to be interdisciplinary collaboration between people from technical backgrounds, people from non-technical backgrounds. Yeah, we need to get teams together to work on these things. It shouldn't be just one or the other. We have a lot to learn from each other.
Exactly, and ethics is something that everyone can speak. It's a language that everyone can speak, but not everyone is able to sort of have the drive or the desire to participate in. So I think trying to generate that kind of a feeling about it through education and through a continuous sort of stream of education that Ali and Abhishek have mentioned, I think is the way to make sort of ethics more of an accessible language to data scientists, engineers.
Yeah, on that point, I think it's also building up incentives for more cooperation, sort of like Camylle said, from not only across the discipline, but also across different regions in the globe. So not just to focus the discussion on perspectives from the US, Europe, and China, Japan, or Korea, but all international actors in AI, and facilitating the ways in which we can get African actors more involved, as well people from South America, and finding ways to not only host discussions that are multilingual, that imply different sort of translations and research from different areas, but also sort of reducing misunderstanding and mistrust, and sort of seeing where we can find points of common agreement. And hopefully those points of common agreement can lead to more legally binding agreements and principles.
Absolutely. And I think, tying sort of all of that together, it's really important to elevate some of those unheard voices, some of those voices that are suppressed, some of those voices that are ignored. And that's part of the work that we do here at the Montreal AI Ethics Institute, is to equip and empower all of these diverse stakeholders for those who are looking to build up their competence in this space. We recently released the State of AI Ethics report. We'd highly recommend that you check that out. Saves you more than 100+ hours. We've distilled some of the essence in terms of the latest developments in the space. So you'll see that in my background link to that report. And you'll also find it in the link in the description to this video as well. Please stay connected with the work that we do. We always encourage people from diverse backgrounds to come and engage with us. That's what really makes our work possible and moves the field forward. We hope you enjoyed this video. Looking forward to interacting with all of you well in real life once the pandemic subsides. But until then, stay tuned. Thank you for joining us.